6-year-old girl refuses to sit. When the teacher finds out. Why, she calls 911 in panic. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. As the morning sunlight filtered through the windows of room 7, Ms. Eleanor Thompson moved between the desks of her first-grade classroom, watching her students settle into their morning routine. 20 years of teaching had given her a sixth sense about children, the subtle tells that spoke volumes beyond their words. That's when she noticed the new girl again, Lily Harper, standing quietly beside her desk while the other children sat. It was her third day at Willow Creek Elementary, and she hadn't sat down once. "Lily, sweetheart," Miss Thompson said gently, approaching the small girl with chestnut hair that fell in uneven waves around her pale face. "Would you like to sit down for our morning story?" The child's fingers tightened around the hem of her faded blue dress. "No thank you, Miss Thompson. I just prefer standing." Her voice was barely audible, her eyes fixed on the floor. Something in the girl's posture made Miss Thompson's heart sink. The slight tremble in her shoulders, the way she shifted her weight as if standing itself caused discomfort. "Did something happen to your chair, Ms. Thompson asked, keeping her tone light. "No, ma'am." Lily's response was practiced, polite. As the day progressed, Ms. Thompson observed how Lily leaned against walls during activities, how she flinched when adults moved too quickly near her, how she never complained despite standing for hours. After dismissal, while organizing tomorrow's lesson plans, Ms. Thompson heard a small sound from the reading corner. There sat Lily, hidden behind a bookshelf, clutching her backpack. "Lily, everyone's gone home, dear." The girl's eyes widened with alarm. "Is it that late? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's all right, Ms. Thompson assured her, noticing how Lily scrambled to her feet. "Are your aunt and uncle coming to pick you up?" At the mention of her guardians, Lily's expression clouded. "Uncle Greg doesn't like waiting," she whispered. Ms. Thompson's instincts flared. "Lily, is everything okay at home?" The girl's answer was interrupted by a sharp honk from outside. Lily's body tensed. "I have to go," she said, rushing toward the door. Ms. Thompson watched her leave, a knot forming in her stomach. Something wasn't right and she couldn't ignore it. The faculty lounge at Willow Creek Elementary buzzed with morning chatter as Ms. Thompson stirred her tea, her mind still on Lily Harper. 20 years in education had taught her that children often communicated their pain through behavior rather than words. "You're doing it again, Ellie," said Diane from the science department, sliding into the chair opposite her. "That 1,000-yard stare. Which student has you worried now?" Eleanor Thompson smiled faintly. Among the staff, she had earned a reputation as the teacher who noticed too much, cared too deeply. Some called it dedication, others, meddling. "New student. Something's not right," she replied. "There's always something not right with someone," Diane said, not unkindly. "You can't save them all." Eleanor's fingers tightened around her mug. Only a handful of colleagues knew why she noticed what others missed, why she couldn't turn away when instinct told her a child was in danger. 10 years ago, there had been a boy named Michael in her class who always wore long sleeves. She had noticed, but hadn't pushed hard enough. By the time anyone intervened, it was too late. The memory of that small, closed casket still haunted her dreams. "Just be careful," Diane cautioned. "Especially with the Harper kid. Greg Harper's brother sits on the school board, you know." Eleanor nodded absently, gathering her papers. In a town like Willow Creek, population 8,742, everyone was connected. The Harpers were old money, old names, the kind of family that had streets named after them. As she moved through her morning routine, arranging the day's worksheets, checking the weather chart, updating the birthday board, Eleanor mentally reviewed what little she knew about Lily. The girl had moved in with her aunt and uncle after losing her parents in a car accident 6 months ago. The transition paperwork mentioned she'd been in grief counseling, which might explain some withdrawal, but not her refusal to sit. When her students began filing in, Eleanor positioned herself by the door, greeting each child by name. Her eyes found Lily immediately, last in line, shoulders hunched forward, wearing the same dress as yesterday despite the cool morning. Before the girl could retreat to her desk, Eleanor stopped her. "Lily, I have a special job for you today. Would you mind handing out these reading folders? The task was deliberately easy, designed to build confidence. For a moment, something like relief passed over Lily's face, a brief escape from whatever weight she carried. Eleanor watched her move carefully between desks, never brushing against other children, her movements precise as if navigating an invisible maze. As the day began, Eleanor opened her bottom drawer, retrieving a small notebook labeled Observations. She turned to a fresh page and wrote, Lily Harper, at the top, followed by the date and a single line. Still standing. Day 4. The October rain tapped rhythmically against the classroom windows as Ms. Thompson added another note to her growing documentation on Lily Harper. Day 12. Arrived without lunch again. Said she wasn't hungry when offered school lunch. Long sleeves despite gym day. Stood during entire math lesson. A knock at her classroom door interrupted her thoughts. Principal Warren stood in the doorway, his usual affable smile firmly in place. Eleanor, the Harpers are here for that meeting you requested. They're waiting in my office. She hadn't expected them to come so quickly. Usually her notes on a student would fill several pages before she felt confident enough to request a parent conference. But with Lily, every instinct urged her not to wait. I'll be right there, she said, tucking the notebook into her desk drawer. In Principal Warren's office, Victoria and Greg Harper sat side by side in matching charcoal gray business attire. Victoria's blonde hair was pulled into an immaculate bun, while Greg's firm handshake and direct gaze projected confidence. They looked nothing like what Eleanor had expected. No visible red flags, just polished professionalism. Ms. Thompson, Victoria said coolly, Principal Warren says you have concerns about Lily. Eleanor carefully outlined her observations. Lily's refusal to sit, her withdrawn behavior, missing lunches, and constant fatigue. She kept her tone neutral, focusing on facts rather than accusations. We appreciate your concern, Greg replied, his voice smooth as glass. But Lily has been through a tremendous ordeal, losing both parents at once. Victoria dabbed at her eye with a monogrammed handkerchief. My sister and her husband, it was so sudden. The trauma has affected Lily deeply. She's seeing Dr. Mitchell for grief counseling, Greg added. He's assured us that some unusual behaviors are normal during this adjustment period. Eleanor nodded. I understand trauma can manifest in many ways. I'm just concerned about her physical comfort. Is there any reason she might be avoiding sitting down? Something flickered across Greg's face. So brief, Eleanor almost missed it. Lily has always been a bit delicate, prone to exaggeration. At our previous home, she told her teacher the chairs at school hurt her bones. Dr. Mitchell believes it's a manifestation of her anxiety. Principal Warren leaned forward. The Harpers are highly respected in our community, Eleanor. Greg's family has supported our school for generations. The message beneath his words was clear. Tread carefully. We're doing everything possible to help Lily through this difficult time, Victoria said, standing to signal the meeting's end. Perhaps she just needs more time to adjust to her new school. As they left, Eleanor noticed Greg's hand on Victoria's back, guiding her forward with what appeared to be gentle pressure, but left white marks on her silk blouse. Later that afternoon, as the children worked on art projects, Eleanor crouched beside Lily's desk where the girl stood coloring a family of stick figures. That's beautiful, Lily. Is that your family? Lily's crayon paused. My old family, before the angels took them. And your new family? Your aunt and uncle? Lily's small fingers gripped the crayon tighter. They're not angels, she whispered, and began frantically scribbling black over the entire picture. The gymnasium echoed with children's laughter as Ms. Thompson's class participated in their weekly physical education period. Coach Bryant had them playing a modified game of tag, their small bodies darting between cones and hoops spread across the polished floor. All except Lily, who stood at the edge of the activity, arms wrapped around herself. Not feeling well, Harper? Coach Bryant called out, his booming voice causing Lily to flinch visibly. She's just observing today, Eleanor interjected, moving closer to the girl. Right, Lily. The child nodded gratefully, her eyes fixed on the floor. When the bell rang, signaling the end of gym class, Eleanor noticed dark clouds gathering outside. "Looks like we might need to stay inside for recess," she told her students. "Let's change quickly and head back to the classroom." In the girls' changing area, Eleanor helped button cardigans and tie shoelaces for her youngest students. She was about to leave when she realized Lily hadn't emerged from the bathroom stall. "Lily, do you need help, sweetheart?" A small sniffle came from behind the door. "My shirt got wet from the drinking fountain. I have extra clothes in my emergency cabinet. Let me get you." The bathroom door burst open as Mia Reynolds rushed in. "Ms. Thompson, the ceiling's leaking in the hallway." By the time Eleanor handled the minor flood and returned to the bathroom, most girls had finished changing and headed back to class. She knocked gently on Lily's stall. "Lily, everyone's gone now. I brought you a dry shirt." The lock clicked open. Lily stood there, still in her gym shirt, her arms crossed over her chest, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's okay to be upset," Eleanor said, kneeling to eye level. "Here, let me help you." As Lily reluctantly turned to take the dry shirt, Eleanor gasped. The back of the child's gym shirt had ridden up, revealing a pattern of deep, purplish bruises across her lower back, distinct oval shapes that no fall could explain. "Lily," Eleanor said, struggling to keep her voice steady, "how did you get these marks?" The girl froze, her entire body tensing. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, in a voice barely audible over the distant thunder, she whispered, "The punishment chair has nails." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "What punishment chair, Lily?" "At home. For bad children who don't listen." Lily's fingers twisted the fabric of her shirt. "Uncle Greg says sitting on it teaches us to behave." Eleanor fought to control her racing heart. Years of training kicked in. Document, report, protect. She helped Lily into the dry shirt, her movements gentle despite the rage building inside her. "Lily, I need you to be very brave. Can you do that for me?" The girl nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm going to have to tell some other adults about what you just told me. Not because you're in trouble, but because what's happening to you isn't right. Uncle Greg says no one will believe me because I tell stories." Lily's voice quavered. "I believe you," Eleanor said firmly, taking the girl's small hand in hers. "And I'm going to make sure you're safe." As they walked back to the classroom, Eleanor reached for her cell phone. Protocol dictated reporting to the principal first, but instinct told her this couldn't wait. She dialed 911. Her decision made. The fluorescent lights of the Willow Creek Police Department hummed overhead as Eleanor sat in a hard plastic chair, clutching her documentation notebook. 3 hours had passed since her call to emergency services. 3 hours since uniformed officers had appeared at her classroom door. 3 hours of questions, forms, and growing frustration. "Ms. Thompson," Officer Drake said, sliding a foam cup of vending machine coffee across the table. "I understand your concern, but there are procedures we need to follow." "I saw the bruises myself," Eleanor insisted, flipping through her notebook. "And I've documented every concerning behavior. 12 days of observations. Lily explicitly mentioned a punishment chair with nails. That's not something a 6-year-old invents." Officer Drake sighed, rubbing his temples. The girl was examined by the school nurse. The bruises appear to be several days old, possibly from before she was placed with the Harpers. "That's absurd," Eleanor countered. "She's been with them for months. And what about her statement about the chair?" "Children sometimes." Drake hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Misinterpret discipline. The Harpers have explained that Lily has been emotionally unstable since her parents' death. They claim she's fabricated stories at her previous school as well." Eleanor's hand tightened around her pen. "May I see that report from her previous school?" Drake shuffled some papers. "It's not in our files yet. We've requested the records." A knock interrupted them as a woman in a neat pantsuit entered, her ID badge identifying her as Marcia Winters, Child Protective Services. "Ms. Thompson, I'm handling Lily's case. I'd like to assure you we're taking this seriously, but our preliminary home visit didn't reveal any concerning conditions." "You've already been to their house?" Eleanor asked incredulously. "When?" "About an hour ago. The Harpers were very cooperative, showed us every room. No evidence of any punishment chair was found." Eleanor fought to keep her voice level. Of course they wouldn't leave evidence in plain sight if they knew you were coming. Ms. Winters's expression hardened slightly. We're trained professionals, Ms. Thompson. The home was immaculate. Lily has her own bedroom with age-appropriate toys and books. There were no signs of neglect or abuse. What about Lily's statement? Did you speak with her alone? Briefly. She appeared nervous but didn't repeat the allegations. In fact, she denied saying anything about a chair with nails. Eleanor felt a chill run through her. She's terrified. Children recant when they're afraid. Officer Drake closed his notebook. Ms. Thompson, false allegations of abuse are serious. The Harpers are respected members of this community. Greg Harper's brother is on the school board, and his family has lived here for generations. What does that have to do with whether he's hurting a child? Eleanor demanded. Ms. Winters intervened smoothly. We'll continue monitoring the situation. Lily will remain with her guardians while we conduct a thorough investigation. We've scheduled a follow-up interview at their home next week. As Eleanor left the police station, rain soaking through her cardigan, she felt a heaviness in her chest. She'd done everything by the book. And yet somehow, Lily was being sent back to the very home she had indicated was unsafe. On impulse, she drove to the county records office. If Lily's previous school had reported concerns, there should be documentation. The clerk, an older woman with kind eyes, helped her search through the database. That's odd, the clerk murmured, frowning at her screen. There was a file, but it's been sealed. Restricted access only. Eleanor's unease deepened. Who has the authority to seal a child's welfare records? A judge, the clerk replied. Or sometimes, well, someone with enough influence. The classroom hummed with activity as Ms. Thompson's first graders worked on their fall-themed presentations. Each child had decorated a paper leaf with things they were thankful for, preparing to share with the class. Parents would attend this special event, a tradition at Willow Creek Elementary. Eleanor scanned the room, her eyes settling on Lily, who stood at her desk meticulously coloring her leaf. In the 2 weeks since Eleanor had reported her concerns, Lily had become even more withdrawn. The investigation seemed to have stalled, with follow-up visits repeatedly rescheduled. All right, everyone, Eleanor announced, clapping her hands gently. Let's gather on the reading carpet. Time to share our gratitude leaves. Children scrambled to the colorful rug, cross-legged and eager. Lily hesitated, then moved to her usual spot at the edge of the group, standing. One by one, students presented their leaves. Typical first-grade responses of my dog, pizza, my tablet. When Lily's turn came, Eleanor noticed the girl's unusual pallor. Lily, would you like to share your leaf with us? The child nodded, stepping forward shakily. I'm thankful for... Her voice faltered as she swayed slightly. Eleanor moved closer. Lily, are you feeling okay? Before the girl could answer, her knees buckled. Eleanor lunged forward, catching her before she hit the floor. The other children gasped, wide-eyed and frightened. Ms. Peters, Eleanor called to her classroom aide. Please take the class to the library. Tell Mrs. Simmons it's an emergency. As the children were ushered out, Eleanor cradled Lily's small form. The girl's skin felt clammy, her breathing shallow. I'll call the nurse, Ms. Peters said, reaching for the classroom phone. When Nurse Gladwell arrived minutes later, she immediately checked Lily's vital signs. Her blood pressure's low, she murmured, concern etching her features. How long has she been like this? She collapsed just a few minutes ago, Eleanor explained, still holding Lily's hand. She hasn't been eating lunch and she always seems exhausted. The nurse gently rolled Lily to her side to check for injuries from the fall. As she lifted the back of the child's sweater, both women froze. Fresher bruises overlapped the ones Eleanor had seen before, alongside what appeared to be small, circular burns. My God, Nurse Gladwell whispered. These aren't accidental. Lily's eyelids fluttered open. Seeing the adults examining her back, panic flooded her face. Don't tell, she pleaded weakly. He'll use the hot spoon if you tell. Eleanor felt her heart shatter. Call an ambulance, she told the nurse. Now. At Willow Creek Memorial Hospital, Eleanor paced the waiting room while doctors examined Lily. Principal Warren arrived, his usual composure replaced by genuine alarm. The Harpers are on their way, he informed her. What exactly happened? Before Eleanor could respond, Dr. Patel emerged from the examination room, her expression grave. Ms. Thompson, a word, please. In a quiet corner, the doctor spoke in low, urgent tones. The child is severely malnourished and shows numerous injuries in various stages of healing. Some appear to be cigarette burns, others consistent with being struck by objects. There's clear evidence of prolonged abuse. Eleanor felt simultaneously vindicated and devastated. I reported this 2 weeks ago. Nobody listened. Dr. Patel nodded grimly. I've already contacted authorities. This time, there will be a formal investigation. The injuries are too severe to explain away. A commotion at the entrance drew their attention as Greg and Victoria Harper strode in, accompanied by a man in an expensive suit. That's our niece, Greg announced loudly to the receptionist. We demand to see her immediately. Eleanor watched as Dr. Patel intercepted them, her small frame somehow imposing as she informed them that Lily was now under hospital protection pending investigation. The man in the suit stepped forward. I'm Richard Harper, attorney and school board member. This is a misunderstanding. My brother has legal guardianship, and I have medical evidence of severe abuse. Dr. Patel cut in firmly. No one is seeing this child without a court order or police clearance. As hospital security arrived to manage the situation, Eleanor slipped away to Lily's room. The girl lay small and fragile amid white sheets and IV in her thin arm. I'm here, Eleanor whispered, taking Lily's hand gently. You're safe now. I promise. Eleanor Thompson stared at her reflection in the staff bathroom mirror, dark circles beneath her eyes testifying to sleepless nights. A week had passed since Lily's hospitalization, and the system that should have protected her was now working overtime to return her to her abusers. The door swung open as Principal Warren entered, his expression tight. Eleanor, the board meeting starts in 10 minutes. You should prepare yourself. For what exactly? She asked, straightening her cardigan. Richard Harper is demanding disciplinary action against you for, his words, reckless accusations damaging to his family's reputation. Several board members seem sympathetic to his position. Eleanor felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. And Lily, what about her? Warren looked away uncomfortably. CPS completed their home assessment yesterday. They're recommending Lily be returned to the Harpers. That's impossible, Eleanor gasped. After what the doctors found, the Harpers claim the injuries happened at her previous home before they got custody. They've produced documentation suggesting Lily had behavioral issues and self-harming tendencies. Warren lowered his voice. Eleanor, Greg Harper's cousin, works in the local CPS office. The hospital findings are being reinterpreted. Eleanor gripped the edge of the sink to steady herself. So they're just going to send her back? After everything? The system works the way it works, Warren said, his tone resigned, especially in small towns like ours. The school board meeting unfolded exactly as Warren had predicted. Richard Harper, imposing in an expensive suit, described his brother and sister-in-law as devoted guardians dealing with a deeply troubled child. Board members nodded sympathetically while Eleanor's evidence was dismissed as overreaching and misinterpreted. While Ms. Thompson's concern for students is admirable, Superintendent Grayson concluded. In this case, her actions have caused unnecessary trauma for a family already dealing with difficult circumstances. We recommend a formal reprimand and reassignment of Lily Harper to Ms. Wilson's class for the remainder of the year. Eleanor sat stunned as the motion passed 6-1. Only Mrs. Rodriguez, a retired social worker, voted against it. The following morning, Lily returned to school. Eleanor caught a glimpse of her in the hallway, thinner, paler, her eyes downcast as Victoria Harper spoke in hushed tones with Ms. Wilson. Lily's gaze briefly met Eleanor's, then quickly darted away, fear evident in the small gesture. Throughout the day, Eleanor noticed subtle changes in her colleagues' behavior. The teacher's lounge fell silent when she entered. Supply requests for her classroom were mysteriously misplaced. Parents who had always been friendly now avoided eye contact in the pickup line. They're isolating you, Nurse Gladwell whispered during lunch. Same thing happened to me when I reported the Parsons case last year. Nothing came of it, and I nearly lost my job. How can an entire town look the other way? Eleanor asked, pushing her untouched sandwich aside. Money. Influence. The Harper family has both. Gladwell leaned closer. But there's something else you should know. I was reviewing Lily's medical records from her previous school. There were 3 reports of suspicious injuries, all marked resolved by the same CPS caseworker who's handling her case now, Marlene Harper Wilkins. Greg's cousin, Eleanor murmured. The pieces falling into place. The whole system here is compromised, Gladwell confirmed. County records, CPS, even some of the police department. The Harpers have built quite a wall of protection around themselves. After school, Eleanor attempted to speak with Ms. Wilson about Lily's well-being, only to be curtly informed that the matter has been handled appropriately and further interference would not be tolerated. As she gathered her belongings to leave, Eleanor found a folded piece of paper in her desk drawer. Inside was a crude, childish drawing of a house with a dark scribble beneath it labeled basement and tiny stick figures trapped inside. In the corner, in wobbly first-grade handwriting, "Help them too." Eleanor's blood ran cold as she realized with dawning horror. Lily wasn't the only child suffering behind the Harpers' pristine facade. The clock in Eleanor's apartment read 11:47 p.m. as she spread Lily's drawing across her kitchen table, alongside the hospital photographs and her documentation notebook. Sleep had become elusive, replaced by an obsessive need to find some way, any way, to help Lily and possibly other children. A sharp knock at her door made her jump. At this hour, in her quiet complex, unexpected visitors were rare. "Who is it?" she called, approaching cautiously. "Detective Marcus Bennett, Willow Creek Police Department," came the reply. "I need to speak with you about Lily Harper." Eleanor opened the door to find a tall man with tired eyes and disheveled dark hair, his police badge held up for inspection. His expression was grim but not unfriendly. "May I come in?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder as if concerned about being seen. Eleanor hesitated, then stepped aside. The detective entered, immediately noticing the materials spread across her table. "I see you've been building your own case," he remarked, picking up one of the hospital photographs. "Not that it's done any good," Eleanor replied, watching him warily. "Are you here to warn me off too? Tell me to mind my own business?" Detective Bennett shook his head. "Just the opposite. I received your initial report 2 weeks ago. Started looking into it myself off the record. Something felt wrong about how quickly it was dismissed." He paused, setting down his badge on the table. "Then I found out why. The Harper family connections," Eleanor supplied. "More than that. There's a pattern of children being placed with the Harpers, showing signs of abuse, then being quietly transferred elsewhere when questions arise. Your report is the first that made it as far as a hospital examination." Eleanor's pulse quickened. "Why are you telling me this? Why not follow official channels?" Bennett's face darkened. "Because I tried that route 3 years ago in Riverdale County. My niece was placed with a politically connected foster family. She showed similar signs, behavioral changes, unexplained injuries. I reported it through proper channels. Everyone assured me they were handling it." His voice cracked slightly. 2 months later, she was dead, officially ruled an unfortunate accident. "I'm so sorry," Eleanor whispered. "After that, I transferred here, started fresh. But when I saw your report about Lily, the same red flags, the same pattern of institutional protection," he gestured to her documents. "I need to know everything you've observed. Everything Lily has told you." Eleanor sat across from him, a cautious hope building. "You believe me? I believe the evidence. And I believe a child is in danger." Bennett pulled out a small notebook. "Off the record to start. Then we'll figure out how to build a case that can't be buried." For the next hour, Eleanor detailed everything. Lily's refusal to sit, her collapse, the revelations about the punishment chair, and the hot spoon. Bennett listened intently, asking occasional questions about timelines and specific statements. When she showed him Lily's drawing of the basement with other figures, his expression grew grave. "Foster homes are limited to a specific number of children, with regular inspections," he explained. But if they're keeping unregistered children, human trafficking, Eleanor suggested, horrified, or illegal private adoptions. Either way, it would explain why the Harpers are so protected. This could involve more people than just one family. Bennett carefully photographed each piece of evidence with his phone. I have contacts in the state police, people outside the local influence network. But we need more concrete evidence, something that can't be explained away. How do we get that when the system is actively protecting them? Eleanor asked. Bennett's expression was resolute. Sometimes you have to work outside the system to fix what's broken inside it. Are you willing to take that risk? Eleanor thought of Lily's frightened eyes, of the mysterious figures in the basement drawing. Whatever it takes, she replied firmly. As Bennett prepared to leave, he handed her a burner phone. Use this to contact me. Trust no one else for now, not colleagues, not local authorities. He paused at the door. You're not alone in this fight anymore, Ms. Thompson. For the first time in weeks, Eleanor felt something like hope. Detective Bennett's unmarked sedan idled at the far end of the municipal building parking lot. Eleanor slid into the passenger seat, clutching a manila folder to her chest. Despite the unseasonably warm October day, she felt chilled to the bone. Did anyone see you? Bennett asked, scanning the rearview mirror. I don't think so. I said I was dropping off field trip forms. Eleanor opened the folder, revealing photocopied documents. These were buried in the school's archived files, previous incident reports involving Harper foster children, all eventually marked resolved or unfounded. Bennett examined the papers, his jaw tightening. 3 different children in 5 years, all showing similar patterns. Each one eventually transferred to different schools or moved away. And look at who signed off on closing each investigation. Eleanor pointed to a signature at the bottom of each form. Judge Thomas Blackwell, Bennett murmured. The same judge who denied the emergency protection order for Lily after her hospitalization. He plays golf with Richard Harper every Sunday, Eleanor added. I overheard Principal Warren mention it. Bennett nodded grimly. I've been digging into financial records. The Harpers have made substantial donations to several key officials' re-election campaigns, including Judge Blackwell's. And there's more. He pulled out his tablet, showing her a spreadsheet. Foster care payments. The Harpers have received funding for 7 children over the past decade, but only 3 were officially enrolled in local schools. The others could be the children in the basement, Eleanor whispered. Exactly. And look at this. Bennett swiped to another document. Property records show the Harper house underwent extensive renovations 3 years ago, including what's listed as a private living area in the basement. No proper permits were filed, but somehow it passed inspection. The inspector's signature? Eleanor asked, already suspecting the answer. Walter Harper, Greg's second cousin. Eleanor leaned back, overwhelmed by the web of corruption. It's like the entire system is designed to protect them, not the children. Small towns, powerful families. It happens more often than you'd think, Bennett said. But what I can't figure out is why. If this is just about collecting foster payments, there are easier ways to commit fraud. Eleanor stared out the window at the municipal building, its American flag fluttering in the breeze, a symbol of justice that now seemed hollow. What if it's not just about money? Bennett glanced at her. What are you thinking? Lily mentioned Friday nights were the worst. That's when her uncle would... Eleanor couldn't finish the sentence. What if they're using these children for something else? Something people would pay to participate in? The detective's face darkened. That would explain the extreme measures to keep it hidden, and why so many officials are involved in the cover-up. Blackmail could ensure silence. They sat in heavy silence, the implications too horrible to voice fully. We need to see what's happening in that basement, Bennett finally said. But a warrant is impossible with Judge Blackwell blocking everything. What about surveillance? Eleanor suggested. If we could document who comes and goes on Friday nights. Bennett nodded slowly. I have some equipment from my previous department, not officially checked out but functional. Eleanor hesitated, then pulled something from her jacket pocket, a small plastic school ID badge. This is Lily's. I found it under her desk after she was moved to Ms. Wilson's class. It has the Harper's address on the emergency contact information. Bennett took the badge, understanding dawning in his eyes. You're suggesting Friday is 3 days away, Eleanor said, her voice steadier than she felt. If there are children being kept in that basement, every day matters. The detective studied her face. This goes beyond professional risk, Ms. Thompson. What you're suggesting could be dangerous. Eleanor thought of Lily's trembling voice, of the stick figures drawn in desperate crayon strokes. Some risks are worth taking. Bennett pocketed the ID badge. Tomorrow night, we'll do preliminary surveillance. See what we're dealing with. He started the engine. Until then, act normally. Any change in routine could alert them. As Eleanor stepped out of the car, Bennett added quietly, You're a brave woman, Ms. Thompson. She shook her head. No, just a teacher who can't look away. The art therapy room at Willow Creek Elementary was Eleanor's sanctuary, a place where children could express what words failed to capture. As the school's part-time art therapist, a role she'd maintained despite her recent reprimand, she had special permission to work with students from any class during their free periods. It had taken considerable negotiation with Ms. Wilson, but finally, Eleanor had secured a session with Lily under the guise of transition support. Principal Warren had reluctantly approved, with the strict condition that all conversation be documented. Eleanor arranged colorful clay, paints, and drawing materials on the low table as she waited, her heart racing. Last night's preliminary surveillance of the Harper home with Detective Bennett had revealed little beyond unusual security measures for a residential property, motion sensors, multiple cameras, reinforced doors. They needed more information before making any move, and Lily might be their only source. The door opened, and Ms. Wilson ushered Lily in. 45 minutes, she reminded Eleanor coolly. No discussion of home circumstances. As the door closed, Eleanor noticed how Lily stood rigidly by the table, eyes downcast. I'm so happy to see you, Eleanor said gently. I've missed having you in my class. Lily's gaze flickered up briefly. Are you in trouble because of me? She whispered. Eleanor's heart clenched. No, sweetheart. Adults sometimes disagree about what's best, but that's not your fault. She gestured to the art supplies. Would you like to make something today? Anything you want. Lily cautiously selected a sheet of paper and some colored pencils, still standing as she began to draw. Eleanor resisted the urge to suggest she sit, instead focusing on building trust. I noticed you like to stand when you work, she commented casually. Lily's pencil paused. Sitting is only for good children, she murmured. I'm not good enough yet. Eleanor carefully kept her expression neutral despite the rage building inside her. Who decides when you're good enough? Uncle Greg and the Friday visitors. Eleanor's pulse quickened. Friday visitors? Who comes on Fridays? Lily's hand trembled slightly as she continued drawing. Important people, with cameras sometimes. She hunched her shoulders. I don't like to talk about Fridays. Trying a different approach, Eleanor pointed to Lily's drawing, what appeared to be a house with multiple rooms. What are you drawing there? Our house, Lily replied. Upstairs is for good children who can behave for the visitors. Downstairs is for new children who need to learn. How many children live at your house, Lily? The pencil stilled again. I'm not supposed to tell, it's a secret. Sometimes, Eleanor said carefully, secrets that hurt you aren't the kind you need to keep. Sometimes brave children tell those secrets to help everyone be safe. Lily seemed to consider this, then slowly added stick figures to her drawing. 2 in what she labeled my room, 3 in another room, and 4 small figures in what appeared to be the basement. 9 children? Eleanor asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. Sometimes more, sometimes they go away. Lily selected a black pencil, heavily shading the basement area. The quiet ones get to come upstairs. The loud ones stay in the dark place longer. Eleanor's mind raced, trying to process the implications while maintaining a calm exterior. What happens when visitors come? Lily's face clouded. Pictures, videos, the chair if we don't smile right. She looked up suddenly, fear crossing her features. I told, now I'll have to sit on the nails again. No, Eleanor assured her, moving closer. I won't let that happen, Lily. You're very brave for telling me. Seeming to need comfort, Lily hesitantly leaned against Eleanor's side, the first voluntary physical contact she'd initiated. There's a new girl in the basement, she whispered. She cries a lot. Uncle Greg says she'll learn to be quiet, or she'll never see the sun again. Eleanor felt physically ill, but kept her arm gently around Lily's shoulders. When did this new girl arrive? 2 nights ago, in a big car with dark windows. Lily added another tiny figure to the basement section of her drawing. She keeps asking for her mommy. I told her mommies don't find you once you're in the dark place. Fighting back tears, Eleanor pointed to the drawing. Would it be okay if I keep this? To remember our special art time? Lily nodded, then suddenly stiffened as footsteps approached outside. She quickly pulled away from Eleanor, resuming her rigid posture. The door opened as Ms. Wilson returned. Time's up, she announced. Before leaving, Lily turned back once, her eyes meeting Eleanor's with a silent plea that communicated more than words ever could. After they left, Eleanor carefully placed the drawing in a folder and texted Bennett from the burner phone. 9 children confirmed. Evidence of trafficking. New girl arrived 2 days ago. We need to move now. His response came seconds later. Tonight, 11 p.m. Be ready. The harsh fluorescent lights of Detective Bennett's makeshift command center, actually the cramped living room of his apartment, cast long shadows as Eleanor paced between stacks of evidence files. On the wall, Bennett had created a web of connections using red yarn and push pins, linking the Harpers to various officials throughout Willow Creek. 9 children, Bennett muttered, running his hand through his already disheveled hair. How could they hide 9 children? Homeschooling laws in this state are incredibly lenient, Eleanor replied, referring to her notes. The Harpers only need to submit annual paperwork claiming they're educating the children at home. No one actually verifies if the children exist or are receiving education. Bennett nodded grimly. It's a perfect setup. Foster officials only inspect what the Harpers want them to see. The main floor, perhaps a few upstairs bedrooms for show. Meanwhile, they collect payments for multiple children and use the basement for... He trailed off, unwilling to verbalize the horrors they both suspected. The new girl is what concerns me most, Eleanor said, her voice tight. If she was brought in just 2 days ago, this isn't just about fostering. This is active trafficking. Bennett checked his watch, 8:17 p.m. We have a decision to make, he said, facing Eleanor directly. If we go through official channels, request a warrant based on Lily's statement and our surveillance, it could take days. With Judge Blackwell involved, it might never happen at all. And if we don't? Eleanor asked, already knowing the answer. We go in tonight. Unauthorized. If we find what Lily described, children being held against their will, it becomes an emergency situation that justifies immediate action. He paused. But if we're wrong, or if we can't find enough evidence quickly, both our careers are over. I could face criminal charges for illegal entry. Eleanor picked up Lily's drawing, studying the small figures trapped in the basement. These aren't just careers we're talking about. These are children's lives. She looked up, resolve hardening. I don't see that we have a choice. Bennett nodded, reaching for his tactical backpack. I have a contact in State Police, Lieutenant Ramirez. If we find something, I'll call her immediately. She can bring in a team that's not connected to local authorities. As Bennett outlined his plan, Eleanor's phone rang. Principal Warren's name flashed on the screen. Exchanging a concerned glance with Bennett, she answered. Eleanor, there's an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., Warren said, his voice unusually strained. Your presence is required. What's this about? She asked, signaling to Bennett to listen in. Richard Harper has filed formal charges against you for harassment and defamation. He's demanding immediate termination. Warren lowered his voice. There's more. He's obtained a restraining order preventing you from contacting Lily or coming within 500 feet of the Harper residence. It was granted this afternoon by Judge Blackwell. Cold dread washed over Eleanor. How did they know I was still in contact with Lily? Someone reported your art therapy session. I'm sorry, Eleanor. This looks bad. After ending the call, she turned to Bennett. They're moving to shut me down completely. Someone must have overheard Lily talking to me today. Bennett cursed under his breath. They're accelerating their timeline, which means we need to accelerate ours. We go tonight, as soon as it's dark. The restraining order complicates things, Eleanor pointed out. Legally, yes. Morally, Bennett shook his head. I've stood by once before while the system protected abusers. Never again. As twilight deepened into night, they prepared in tense silence. Bennett checked his service weapon and loaded a small bag with flashlights, a digital camera, and lockpicking tools. Remnants from his previous assignment in tactical operations. Eleanor's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. County Records Office fire. All foster care files destroyed. Not an accident. They're covering their tracks, Bennett muttered, reading over her shoulder. We're running out of time. At 10:30 p.m., they left in Bennett's unmarked car, driving a circuitous route to avoid being spotted. The Harper house stood at the end of a private road, surrounded by tall oak trees that provided natural cover. Friday nights are when they have visitors, Eleanor reminded him as they parked a quarter-mile away. According to Lily, that means there could be others in the house beside the Harpers. All the more reason to document everything we find, Bennett replied, checking his camera. Remember, we're just gathering evidence tonight. We don't engage unless a child is in immediate danger. The walk to the property was tense, each shadow and sound amplifying Eleanor's fear. Yet underneath that fear burned a fierce determination. She thought of Lily standing for hours because sitting was a privilege she hadn't earned. She thought of the nameless girl crying in the basement, asking for her mother. At the edge of the property, Bennett paused, studying the security setup through binoculars. 2 cameras covering the front entrance, motion sensors along the main walkway. But the side entrance near the garage appears less monitored. That's where they bring in groceries, Eleanor whispered, remembering details from Lily's drawing. She marked it with an X. Bennett nodded approvingly. You'd make a good detective, Miss Thompson. I prefer teaching, she replied grimly. When this is over, I want nothing more than to be back in my classroom, knowing every child goes home to safety. As they approached the side entrance, ducking beneath windows and security cameras, Eleanor silently pledged to the children inside. Hold on. We're coming for you. Just hold on a little longer. The service entrance door yielded to Bennett's practiced touch, its lock surrendering with a soft click that seemed thunderous in the silent night. Eleanor held her breath as they slipped inside, finding themselves in a mudroom adjacent to a gleaming kitchen. The contrast between the pristine granite countertops and the horrors they suspected lay below was jarring. Remember, Bennett whispered, document everything, touch nothing unless absolutely necessary. They moved through the ground floor with practiced caution, Bennett leading, Eleanor following closely, both hyper-aware of creaking floorboards and security systems. The main living areas appeared normal, if unusually sterile. Expensive furniture arranged precisely, family photos displaying Greg and Victoria Harper with various children, all smiling with vacant eyes. Look, Eleanor breathed, pointing to a framed certificate on the wall. Citizen of the Year, awarded to Greg Harper by Mayor Collins for exceptional dedication to child welfare. The bitter irony made her stomach turn. Bennett photographed it silently before continuing their search. At the end of a long hallway, they found a heavy door secured with both a deadbolt and a keypad lock. Basement access, Bennett murmured, examining the sophisticated security. This is no ordinary child-proofing. While Bennett worked on the lock, Eleanor noticed a small alcove nearby containing a monitoring station, 6 small screens displaying different areas of the house. One screen showed what appeared to be a bedroom, where 2 small figures lay motionless in separate beds. Children upstairs, she whispered, pointing to the monitor. Bennett nodded grimly as the lock finally yielded. The door opened to reveal a staircase descending into darkness. Cool, damp air carried the unmistakable smell of fear, a mixture of sweat, urine, and desperation that Eleanor would never forget. Bennett clicked on his flashlight, keeping the beam low as they descended. At the bottom, another door, this one reinforced steel with a sliding observation window. The detective's face hardened as he worked on this final barrier, his movements more urgent now. When the door swung open, Eleanor had to stifle a gasp. The basement had been converted into a series of cell-like rooms with mattresses on the floor. In the dim light cast by a single bulb, they could make out small figures huddled under thin blankets. One child, a girl perhaps 7 years old, sat rocking in the corner, her arms wrapped around her knees. "Police," Bennett announced softly, showing his badge. "We're here to help." The children didn't move, their fearful eyes tracking the adults with suspicion born of betrayal. Eleanor stepped forward, kneeling to appear less threatening. "My name is Ms. Thompson. I'm a teacher," she said gently. "We're going to get you somewhere safe." The rocking girl spoke, her voice barely audible. "Are you real help or pretend help?" The others said they were helping too. Eleanor's heart fractured at the question. "Real help," she promised. "I know Lily. She told me about you." At Lily's name, something shifted in the room, a current of cautious hope passing between the children. A smaller child crawled out from under a blanket, revealing a gaunt face and tangled hair. "The new girl's really sick," he whispered, pointing to a mattress in the far corner. "She won't stop crying for her mama." Bennett and Eleanor moved quickly to the indicated spot, where a tiny form trembled beneath a threadbare blanket. The child couldn't have been more than 4, her face flushed with fever, lips cracked from dehydration. "We need to get her medical attention immediately," Bennett said, already pulling out his phone to contact Lieutenant Ramirez. The others seemed stable enough to wait for proper transport. While Bennett made the call, Eleanor began gathering basic information from the children. Names, ages, how long they'd been there. The stories emerged in fragments, promises of adoption that never materialized, punishments for asking questions, being brought out only for special visits when important people came. 9 children, Eleanor counted softly, her documentation instincts kicking in despite her horror. Just as Lily said. Bennett returned, his expression grimly satisfied. "State Police Tactical Team is mobilizing. ETA 20 minutes. They'll secure the premises and take custody of the children." He knelt beside the feverish child. "We should get her upstairs, ready for transport." As Eleanor gently wrapped the sick child in her own jacket, a small hand tugged at her sleeve. It was the rocking girl, her eyes suddenly animated with urgent fear. "It's Friday," she whispered. "They'll be coming soon for the pictures." Bennett checked his watch, 11:47 p.m. "Who comes on Fridays?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Important men with cameras." The girl's voice dropped even lower. "And Judge Thomas, who says no one will ever believe us." Eleanor and Bennett exchanged a look of grim confirmation. The corruption ran exactly as deep as they'd feared. "You're safe now," Eleanor assured the children, even as Bennett hurriedly photographed the basement, documenting the sparse conditions, the punishment implements, the hidden cameras in corners. As they prepared to move the sick child upstairs, a sudden noise froze them in place. Car tires on the gravel driveway above, headlights sweeping across the basement's tiny windows. "Friday visitors," Bennett muttered, his hand moving to his service weapon. "Change of plans. I'll secure the main floor while we wait for backup. Get the children into one room and stay with them." As Bennett disappeared up the stairs, Eleanor gathered the children close, her teacher's voice calm despite her racing heart. "I need everyone to be very brave and very quiet," she said, ushering them into the smallest room. "Help is coming, and this time I promise you, it's real." The children huddled together, years of conditioning making them nearly silent even in crisis. The smallest one, a boy missing his front teeth, looked up at Eleanor with devastating hope. "After the police come," he whispered, "will we be allowed to sit in chairs?" Eleanor blinked back tears, pulling him close. "Yes," she promised. "You can sit wherever you want for as long as you want." Above them, they heard the front door open, voices raised in greeting. Then Bennett's authoritative announcement. Seconds later, chaos erupted. Shouts, running footsteps, something heavy falling. Eleanor positioned herself between the door and the children, prepared to defend them with her life if necessary. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. These children would never spend another night in darkness. The fluorescent lights of Willow Creek Hospital's pediatric wing hummed overhead, as Eleanor sat beside a sleeping child's bed, her hand gently resting on the small arm connected to an IV. The feverish girl they'd found in the basement, now identified as 4-year-old Mia Reynolds, reported missing from a neighboring county 3 weeks ago, had finally stabilized after a night of intensive care. Across the hall, Detective Bennett conferred with Lieutenant Ramirez of the state police, their serious expressions visible through the glass partition. The raid on the Harper house had resulted in 9 children rescued, 5 arrests, and a shockwave of disbelief rippling through the community. Eleanor checked her watch, 9:17 a.m. She'd been awake for over 24 hours, running on adrenaline and black coffee. The faces of the children they'd found kept flashing through her mind, hollow-eyed, suspicious of kindness, conditioned to fear. A social worker had asked 7-year-old Amber why she didn't try to escape, and the girl had simply replied, "Where would we go? The police bring you back. The judge makes you stay." Bennett entered the room, fatigue etched in the lines around his eyes. "How is she?" "Better," Eleanor replied, gently stroking Mia's hair. "Doctor says she'll recover physically. Emotionally?" She left the sentence unfinished. Bennett nodded in understanding. "The state's attorney general is sending a special prosecutor. With the evidence we gathered and Lieutenant Ramirez's team's findings, they're building a solid case." He lowered his voice. "We found recording equipment in the basement. Videos of sessions with the children. Judge Blackwell features prominently in several." Eleanor's stomach clenched. "What about Lily? Have they found her yet?" "The Harpers claim she's at a relative's cabin. State police are en route now." Bennett hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Greg Harper made bail this morning." "What?" Eleanor sat up straighter, disturbing Mia, who whimpered in her sleep. "How is that possible after what we found?" "Richard Harper pulled strings with a different judge, a friend from law school. He's arguing that Greg was unaware of what was happening in his own basement, that Victoria was the primary caretaker." Bennett's disgust was palpable. "It won't stick, but it bought him temporary freedom." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Thompson, there's a call for you at the nurse's station." Eleanor followed her out, puzzled. Few people knew she was here. At the desk, she picked up the phone cautiously. "Hello? You've made a serious mistake." The voice was smooth, controlled, Richard Harper's practiced legal tone. "My brother is a pillar of this community. What happened last night was an illegal search predicated on the manipulated testimony of troubled children." Eleanor's grip tightened on the receiver. 9 children were found locked in a basement, Mr. Harper. That's not manipulation, that's evidence. Evidence obtained illegally without a warrant by a suspended teacher with a restraining order against her. His voice hardened. "The case will never reach trial. Meanwhile, your career is over. No school district in this state will touch you after the lawsuit we're filing." "Is that supposed to scare me?" Eleanor asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "It's merely a reality check. Certain arrangements in this town have existed for generations. People who interfere tend to face consequences." The threat hung in the air between them. Eleanor thought of the children, of Lily still missing, and found her courage. "Threaten me all you want. The truth is already out there, and no amount of legal maneuvering will put it back in the basement where you've kept it." She hung up, her hand trembling slightly. When she turned, she found Bennett watching her with concern. "Richard Harper?" he guessed. At her nod, he sighed. "They're desperate. The videos we found implicate at least 7 prominent community members, including the mayor and Judge Blackwell. They'll fight like hell to discredit everything." Before Eleanor could respond, commotion erupted at the hospital entrance. Security guards rushed toward the doors as angry voices rose. Through the glass doors, she glimpsed Greg Harper being restrained by hospital security, his face contorted with rage. "Where are they?" he shouted. "Those are my foster children. I have legal rights." Bennett moved Eleanor behind him protectively as more security personnel arrived. "He can't get in here," he assured her. "The children are under police protection." Yet the sight of Greg Harper, free to walk the streets, to threaten and intimidate, sent ice through Eleanor's veins. The system that had failed these children for so long was still trying to shield their abusers. Later that afternoon, as Eleanor finally prepared to leave the hospital, Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check the local paper's website. Front page. With shaking fingers, she opened the Willow Creek Chronicle's digital edition. The headline hit her like a physical blow. Teacher's vigilante justice. Local educator and rogue detective accused of manufacturing evidence in Harper case. The article quoted anonymous sources, claiming Eleanor had a personal vendetta against the Harper family after being reprimanded at work. It suggested she had coached Lily and other children to make false statements and had conspired with Detective Bennett to plant evidence. As she scrolled through the character assassination disguised as journalism, Bennett approached, his face grim. "I see you've read it," he said quietly. "The Harpers own the newspaper. Richard's wife is the editor." Eleanor closed her phone, suddenly bone-weary. Will it ever end? This web of corruption and protection? Bennett's expression softened. "The truth doesn't stay buried forever, Ms. Thompson. You proved that last night." He gestured toward the pediatric ward where the rescued children slept safely. "For the first time in years, these kids will sleep without fear. Whatever happens next, remember that." As they walked toward the exit, Eleanor's phone rang again, this time the school district's number. With a deep breath she answered, knowing what was coming. "Ms. Thompson." The superintendent's voice was formal, distant. "In light of recent events, the board has voted to suspend you indefinitely pending investigation. Please turn in your classroom keys immediately." She ended the call without responding, her eyes meeting Bennett's. "They're trying to silence us," she said. "Let them try," he replied with quiet determination. "Some battles are worth losing everything for." Outside the hospital, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. A storm approaching Willow Creek both literally and figuratively. As rain began to fall, Eleanor looked back at the hospital where 9 children slept in safety, their greatest ghost still haunting them. Lily Harper, somewhere out there, still in need of rescue. The Willow Creek County Courthouse stood imposing against the gray October sky, its marble columns and broad steps designed to intimidate those seeking justice within its walls. Television vans lined the street, reporters clutching microphones as they delivered updates to a nation now captivated by what media had dubbed the basement of Willow Creek. Eleanor Thompson adjusted her simple navy blazer, the same one she'd worn to parent-teacher conferences for years, as she climbed the courthouse steps. The past 3 weeks had transformed her life completely. Suspended from her job, vilified in local press, followed by photographers whenever she left her apartment. Only the steady support of Detective Bennett and the knowledge that the children were safe kept her moving forward. Inside the packed courtroom, she took her seat behind the prosecutor's table. The special prosecutor assigned by the state attorney general, Vanessa Chen, had spent hours preparing Eleanor for today's preliminary hearing, an opportunity to determine if enough evidence existed to proceed to trial against Greg and Victoria Harper. Judge Blackwell and 4 other prominent community members implicated in the exploitation ring. "All rise," the bailiff announced as Judge Marilyn Ocasio entered, a federal judge brought in specifically to avoid local conflicts of interest. Eleanor scanned the courtroom, her eyes settling briefly on the defense table where Greg and Victoria Harper sat in expensive suits, their expressions carefully composed. Behind them sat Richard Harper, his cold gaze fixed directly on Eleanor. Judge Ocasio spoke with crisp authority. "This preliminary hearing will determine if the state has sufficient evidence to proceed with charges of child abuse, exploitation of minors, human trafficking, and corruption of public officials." She glanced at the crowded gallery. "Given the sensitive nature of testimony involving minors, I'm ordering all non-essential personnel to leave the courtroom during victim statements." As reporters reluctantly filed out, Eleanor felt a hand on her shoulder. Detective Bennett slid into the seat beside her. "State police found Lily," he whispered. "She was at a hunting cabin registered to Greg Harper's college roommate. She's safe, being evaluated at Children's Hospital in the city." Relief washed over Eleanor like a physical wave. For weeks, Lily's whereabouts had been their greatest concern, with the Harpers claiming ignorance after their initial story fell apart. Prosecutor Chen began methodically presenting evidence, photographs of the basement cells, medical reports detailing malnutrition and injuries consistent with prolonged abuse, financial records showing suspicious payments between the defendants. The courtroom remained silent except for occasional gasps as particularly damning evidence was revealed. Then came the most powerful evidence, videos recovered from hidden recording equipment in the basement. Judge Ocasio allowed only still images to be shown in court, but her own expression hardened visibly as she reviewed the full content privately. "The state calls Eleanor Thompson," Prosecutor Chen announced. As Eleanor took the stand and was sworn in, she felt the weight of the Harpers' stares. Richard Harper leaned forward, whispering to Greg's attorney. For nearly an hour, Eleanor testified about her observations of Lily, the documentation she had kept, the institutional barriers she'd encountered when reporting her concerns. Defense attorneys objected repeatedly, trying to paint her as an unstable, vindictive employee with a persecution complex. "Ms. Thompson," Greg Harper's attorney asked during cross-examination, "isn't it true that you broke into my client's home without a warrant, violating a legally obtained restraining order?" Before she could answer, Judge Ocasio interrupted. "Counselor, the legality of evidence collection has been addressed in previous motions. The emergency exception applies given the circumstances they discovered. Move on." The attorney shifted tactics. "Isn't it true that you've been reprimanded multiple times for overstepping with students, for seeing abuse where none exists?" Eleanor met his gaze steadily. "I was reprimanded once for reporting suspected abuse of Michael Donovan, a second grader in my class 5 years ago. That report was dismissed. 3 months later, Michael died from injuries inflicted by his stepfather." Her voice remained calm despite the emotion behind her words. "I promised myself I would never stay silent again, no matter the personal cost." A murmur ran through the courtroom as the attorney faltered. Prosecutor Chen called her next witness, a courageous county clerk who had secretly preserved copies of previously lost abuse reports, revealing a decade-long pattern of complaints being buried. The most powerful testimony, however, came via closed-circuit television. Lily Harper, seated in a comfortable room at Children's Hospital, spoke in a clear voice about the punishment chair, the basement where bad children were kept, and the Friday visitors who took pictures and videos. When asked why she didn't tell anyone sooner, her answers silenced the courtroom. "Judge Thomas said no one would believe kids like us. He said we were lucky anyone wanted us at all." By late afternoon, Judge Ocasio had heard enough. "There is more than sufficient evidence to proceed to trial on all charges," she declared. "Bail is revoked for all defendants pending trial. This case will be transferred to federal court due to the interstate trafficking elements." As officers moved to take the defendants into custody, Victoria Harper collapsed in sobs while Greg maintained his stone-faced composure. Richard Harper stood, pointing at Eleanor. "This isn't over," he called out. "You've destroyed my family with your lies." Judge Ocasio banged her gavel. "Remove him from my courtroom." Outside, rain had given way to weak autumn sunshine. Eleanor stood on the courthouse steps beside Detective Bennett, watching the defendants being led to police vehicles. "It's really happening," she said softly. "They're actually going to face justice." Bennett nodded. "The case is solid. Chen says with the evidence we have, they're looking at decades in prison. And the children? Being placed in vetted homes across the state far from Harper influence. Proper therapy. Proper schools." He hesitated. "Lily asked about you, wanted to know if you were okay." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "She was worried about me? After everything she's been through?" "That's the thing about children," Bennett said gently. "Their capacity for compassion sometimes survives even the worst humanity can inflict on them." As they walked down the steps together, a small crowd had gathered, teachers from Willow Creek Elementary holding handmade signs. "We believe Ms. Thompson and justice for the children." Mrs. Rodriguez, the one school board member who had supported Eleanor throughout, stepped forward with an envelope. "The teachers took up a collection," she explained. "It's not much, but it might help until the wrongful termination lawsuit is settled." Eleanor shook her head, overwhelmed by the gesture. For weeks, she had felt utterly alone in her fight against the system. "What happens now?" someone called out. Eleanor looked back at the courthouse, then to the supportive faces around her. Now we make sure this never happens again. We listen to children. We question authority when necessary. We remember that sometimes the most important truths come from the smallest voices. As the crowd dispersed, Bennett touched her elbow. There's someone who wants to see you if you're up for it. Lily? Eleanor asked. Hope rising in her chest. Bennett nodded. She's asking for the teacher who believed her when no one else would. 1 year after the Harper case shocked the nation, Willow Creek Elementary buzzed with the energy of a new school year. Colorful bulletin boards lined freshly painted hallways, and the sound of children's laughter echoed through classrooms where once there had been whispered fears and averted gazes. Eleanor Thompson adjusted the Welcome Students sign above her classroom door, pausing to straighten a photograph on the wall beside it. 9 children standing before the state capitol, their faces bright with the kind of smile that reaches the eyes. The photo had been taken 6 months ago, when the Willow Creek 9 had been invited to witness the signing of the Lily's Law, legislation requiring independent oversight of foster care placements and enhanced background checks for prospective guardians. The trial had ended with justice delivered. Greg and Victoria Harper, Judge Blackwell, and their accomplices all sentenced to substantial prison terms. The investigation had expanded, uncovering similar exploitation rings in 3 neighboring counties, all using the foster system to traffic vulnerable children. Richard Harper had avoided criminal charges but fled the state in disgrace after his law license was revoked for witness intimidation. Ms. Thompson? A voice from the doorway pulled Eleanor from her thoughts. Principal Rodriguez, formerly Mrs. Rodriguez from the school board, now the new principal after Warren's resignation, stood there smiling. Our special visitor has arrived. Eleanor's heart quickened as she hurried to the main entrance where Detective Bennett, recently promoted to head a new Crimes Against Children unit, waited beside a slender girl with chestnut hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Lily, Eleanor breathed, opening her arms as the child rushed forward for a hug. Now 7 years old, Lily Harper, who had chosen to keep her last name as a badge of survival, had blossomed under the care of her adoptive mother, a retired social worker who specialized in trauma recovery. I got your invitation, Lily said, pulling back to look up at her former teacher. Mom said I could miss 1 day of 2nd grade to visit. I'm so glad, Eleanor replied, taking in the healthy glow of Lily's cheeks, the confident set of her shoulders. The students are very excited to meet you. As they walked toward Eleanor's classroom, Bennett fell into step beside them. How's the new job? He asked Eleanor. She smiled. Being rehired with back pay and a formal apology was nice. Being appointed to the state's Child Welfare Reform Commission was unexpected. Well deserved, Bennett corrected. Nobody fought harder for these changes. The classroom fell silent as Eleanor entered with Lily and Detective Bennett. 20 first graders sat in a circle, wide-eyed with anticipation. Eleanor had prepared them carefully for this visit, explaining in age-appropriate terms about bravery and speaking up when something feels wrong. Class, this is my friend Lily and Detective Bennett, Eleanor introduced. Remember how we talked about safety and trusted adults? They're here to share something important with you. Lily glanced at Eleanor, who nodded encouragingly. The girl stepped forward, remarkably poised for her age. Hi, she began. Last year I was in a bad place where I wasn't allowed to sit down. I had to stand all day because some grown-ups made rules that hurt kids. She paused, looking around at the attentive faces. Ms. Thompson noticed something was wrong because she really looked at me, not just with her eyes, but with her heart. A child raised his hand. Were you scared? Lily nodded. Very scared. But Ms. Thompson taught me that some secrets are too heavy to keep by yourself. She gestured to Bennett. And Detective Bennett showed me that some police officers really do help kids, even when other grown-ups don't listen. That's why we want you to remember, Bennett added gently. If something doesn't feel right, keep telling trusted adults until someone helps you. After answering questions and sharing the child-friendly picture book they had created about safety, Eleanor watched Lily interact with her students. The girl moved among them with ease, sitting cross-legged on the carpet, leaning comfortably against a chair, simple actions that once would have been unthinkable for her. As the visit concluded, Lily lingered while Bennett stepped outside to take a call. She approached Eleanor's desk, running her fingers along the polished wood surface. "I have something for you," she said quietly, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. Eleanor carefully unfolded it to find a drawing, a classroom filled with smiling children, all seated in brightly colored chairs. In careful handwriting across the top, "In Ms. Thompson's room, everyone gets to sit." Tears pricked Eleanor's eyes as she embraced Lily once more. "Are you happy in your new home?" she whispered. Lily nodded against her shoulder. "Mom got me a special chair for my desk. It's purple with sparkles." She pulled back, her expression suddenly serious beyond her years. "The other kids from the basement, are they okay too?" "Yes," Eleanor assured her. "They're all in safe homes now. Some even write to me sometimes." Bennett returned, smiling at the scene before him. "Ready to go, Lily? Your mom's waiting." As they walked toward the exit, Eleanor noticed Lily deliberately stop by each classroom chair, touching them lightly as she passed. At the door, the girl turned back. "Ms. Thompson, remember how I used to say I preferred standing?" Eleanor nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I don't anymore," Lily said simply. "Now I sit whenever I want. Sometimes all day." Her smile, free, unguarded, was like sunlight breaking through clouds. That's what being safe feels like. After they departed, Eleanor returned to her classroom, where her students had resumed their morning activities. She watched them, laughing, learning, sitting or standing as they chose, and thought about the invisible scars that some children carried, and how a moment of attention, a willingness to see what others overlooked, could change the course of a life. On her desk, Lily's drawing caught the morning light. Eleanor pinned it to her bulletin board where she would see it every day, a reminder that in a world where darkness sometimes flourished in plain sight, the simple act of truly seeing a child could illuminate the path to healing. In Willow Creek, a community still recovering from the shock of discovering monsters in their midst, seeds of change were taking root, planted by a teacher who refused to look away, a detective who honored his oath to protect, and a brave little girl who finally found her voice. And somewhere across town, in a classroom much like Eleanor's, Lily Harper sat comfortably in her second-grade chair, no longer afraid, no longer silent, a child reclaiming the childhood that had nearly been stolen from her.